place where we face our ideals, where we remember our loved ones in absence, where we give thanks, where we make confessions. Welcome to this place where we offer forgiveness, where we look to be enlightened and we look to be strengthened. Through this quiet hour breathes the worship of ages, the cathedral music of history. Welcome the unseen guests that attend faith, hope, and love, and let our hearts prepare them a place.
Good morning. As we sing now and as we sing during the rest of the service, I invite you to find a posture that is conducive to breathing. Our first song today is Now Let Us Sing.
And as we light our chalice, we invite you to put into the chat box where you're lighting your chalice. And please do that as I read these words by Andrea Moll. As we gather together, may we remember, when you share with me what is most important to you, that is where listening begins. When I show you that I hear you, when I say your life matters, that is where compassion begins. When I risk my comfort to ease your suffering, when I act against hatred, violence, and injustice, that is where courage begins. When we experience the full presence of each other because of our shared humanity, because of our differences, that is where holy gratitude begins. May the space be a table that is not complete until all are welcome. May this table be a space of beauty where together we create a series of miracles and where all that we share is sacred.
stuffy sleepover at People's Church was quite an exciting weekend. Everyone arrived to drop their stuffed animals off safely with their masks on outside. There was so much enthusiasm and anticipation for the weekend ahead. We started off by playing parachute games. That's what we do often at our kids' sleepovers too, because it helps to get all the wiggles out. And then the stuffies wanted to do some fidget basket activities. Those fidget baskets haven't been played with for a long time. There were a lot of fun toys and activities in there. After we wrapped that up, we headed into the kids' room to settle into the pillows in the reading nook for story time. Everybody found a comfy spot, and we read Unitarian Universalism is a really long name, and The Water Protectors. We had a great story time until we pulled out the gas we pass in the story of farts, and then the whole story time completely devolved into fart jokes. On the Stuffies registration forms, each child indicated what their Stuffies' allergies, their bedtimes, their favorite activities, and anything else we should know about them. Celia is a seal who loves doing tricks, and Lollipop loves to read. Next, we headed over to the toys. Legos are always popular with everybody. Peggy especially enjoyed the Lego bin. It was just her size. Here, Vanilla Polka Dots and Prancer the reindeer were building with the cups, while Ring Around the Rosie doll and Cinder were sliding down the slide with Snakey. Snakey loved the slide. After we were done playing in the playroom for a while, we headed into the kitchen to bake some cookies. Everybody loved baking the cookies. We were fortunate that Peggy and Panther Ang were there to help take the cookies out of the oven. Everyone gathered around to watch the cookies coming out of the hot oven. After that, it was time to decorate them. All the stuffies got the frosting and the sprinkles out to make the cookies beautiful. And after that, they bagged them up and sent cookies home with each child. So that was really nice. After they got their fill in the kitchen, they headed into a classroom for checkers and chess playing time. We had quite the rousing matches going on. Peggy and Mandry were playing quite an intense chess match with Foxy and Panther Ang offering their guidance throughout. We had to keep checking the registration forms to ensure we had everyone's correct dietary preferences. Snakey eats snake pirates, and Cinder likes candy canes, pop, and popcorn. Fortunately, the weather was mild enough that we got to enjoy some outside time to play on the playground. Here we have Cinder and Prancer and Ring Around the Rosie doll ready to head down the slide, while Dangler and Vanilla Polka Dots are peeking out through the peek hole in the playground. The sandbox is always everybody's favorite activity. That and the hula hoops were popular too. Finally, it was time for everyone to pile on to the airplane for an airplane ride. It was a balancing act, but we managed to get everybody onto the airplane. So many giggles were had by everyone on that ride. Of course, tree climbing is always a fun activity. And Ring Around the Rosie Doll and Mandry the Mandrill both indicated they love tree climbing. Buffalo Tracy loves to cut the grass with his teeth, and he will also cut people, so we had to be careful around him. He has a family that loves him very much, though. On the swing near the labyrinth, that was one of the most popular activities, both with kids during the church year and with the stuffies. Peggy wants a ribbon for being one of the biggest stuffies at the sleepover. We had a great nature hike on the trails behind the church, and everybody had fun climbing on top of this log to pose for this picture. Foxy especially loves having adventures, so hiking was especially fun. We all piled back in the wagon to head back into church after all that outdoor playtime. It was time to chill out together in the foyer. Such a nice view out the windows. And there was enough room for everybody on the couches and the couch and the chairs. There's Prancer. He loves jumping high. Everybody was happy to have a little bit of rest time after all that activity. Then, as they looked out the window, they realized that one of our resident deer wanted to check out our sleepover fun. Vanilla Polka Dots wants people to know that she's very shy and sensitive at first, and Horny's a bit of a biter, but you gotta approach him slowly and say please, and then you'll be alright. After we hung out on the couch, we went into our UU worship circle. The stuffies shared many joys and sorrows together and did a loving kindness meditation, which was really nice. Dangler said, whatever you do, don't let him near a turkey because he goes savage. And he only sleeps if he pukes rainbows. And Ring Around the Rosie Doll, her owner says her sneezing is so strong it can break coffee cups. After worship, we headed in for some toothbrushing time with Ballet Cat because Lollipop brought her toothbrush and toothpaste in her backpack. Ballet Cat tells us that she loves doing ballet. Lollipop and Eliane Otter sent a note to let us know that Friday is movie night at their house. Lollipop's favorite activity is playing maracas. Eliana Otter loves getting her back scratched before bed. It was nice of Ring Around the Rosie Doll to scratch it for her. Peggy, Panther Ang, and Chickpea each brought their own blankets, pillows, and storybox, and Peggy even brought her own stuffy to sleep with. We got everyone all tucked in for the night after the movie in room 19. Chickpea was happy with his own sleeping bag to sleep next to Peggy and Panther Ang. Everybody went to bed except for those who said their stuffy could stay up all night. At 4 a.m., here are the night owls eating sweets and playing Monopoly. Overall, it was a great stuffy sleepover. The end.
Hello, People's People. I'm Kelly Henderson, Executive Director of Ministry with Community and fellow People's Church member. Many of you know the mission of Ministry with Community, to empower people to make positive life changes. You know that we're a space of unconditional acceptance for people experiencing homelessness, poverty, substance use, mental illness, and other challenges, and that we are open every single day of the year. You know that Ministry with Community provides daytime shelter and services like breakfast and lunch, private shower rooms, laundry facilities, phone access, and a mailing address, and more intensive services like obtaining birth certificates and IDs, and assisting with paperwork for our members, the people that we serve, to access other services. COVID-19 has brought incredible challenges as we continue to provide these daily services, but we have remained open throughout the pandemic. Our goal has been to provide the most services to the most people as safely as we can, so we've had to adjust how we do what we do. On March 17th, we had hundreds of people with various needs in our building, accessing showers and laundry, getting needed hygiene items, meeting with a social worker or a partner agency on site that day. I know it's a grainy image, but the top is the view from that day, and the lower is what our common area has looked like since. We removed tables and many chairs. Limited people are allowed in the building, spaced apart, now with masks on. Only one partner agency has returned to assist members with mental health and substance use disorders, such a critical need at this time. We greet our members at the door, we take their temperature and record their name. We have a mask for them to wear while they're here, if they don't already have one or need to wash the one that they do have, thanks to incredibly generous and talented donors of those masks. We still smile and hope our members can see it in our eyes because we're always wearing a mask too. Our kitchen staff still lovingly and thoughtfully prepare those meals to serve anyone who comes to us, though now our meals are served in to-go containers. And for those unable to enter our building because of our limitations for physical distancing, many folks get that same meal to go from our back door. A sunny spot this summer was, once again, our garden. Some staff and members, along with a small handful of community volunteers, ensured that our garden produced good foods to head into our meal production. Over 700 pounds were harvested this year thanks to their diligence. Some people may have COVID-19 without symptoms, so we need to keep our masks on, our plastic barriers up, limit contact with each other, and practice excellent hygiene. We've increased our already rigorous cleaning. This is how we must provide services for everyone's safety. People's Church members have been part of the tapestry of Ministry with Community over the years. Many are annual donors or contribute to this special collection. They've sponsored meals, volunteered their time, and more. This is certainly the time to support each other, to know we're all human beings on this planet, facing this extraordinary moment in history together. I am immensely grateful for the gifts that you have already given to support the needs in our community, and I know that there are many. And for any support you're able to give today to help folks in the greatest need in our community. Thank you.
Amber called, her uncle said, we're up here for the holiday. Jane and I were having solstice, now we need a place to stay. And her Christ-loving uncle watched his wife hang Mary on a tree. He watched his son hang
Please join me in giving thanks for all that sustains us. From the countless gifts we each have been given, gifts of life and love and sustenance, we share these small portions in the works of love which none of us can accomplish alone.
And now, as we begin a time of guided meditation together, I first invite you to get 10% more comfortable in your body in this moment. Maybe that's rolling your shoulders back or unclenching your jaw, finding a slightly more comfortable way to sit. And now I invite you to think of a time, to remember a time when you changed your mind or your heart about something important. Remember how it happened. Maybe it was a slow, gradual change. Maybe it happened all at once. Remember how that change felt in your body. Maybe a weight felt like it was lifted, or something that felt muddled became clear, or something else. Remember if this change happened by yourself or with others, and how you were supported or not as you came into this new truth. And know that you are part of a long line of people who have changed their minds about things that matter. As one of the oldest ideas in our Unitarian Universalist tradition, the idea that truth is ever unfolding. And it is our religious work to change our minds when there is something new that makes our minds change. And now I invite you to sing with me.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May
on the Ridge by Mark Nepo. We can grow by simply listening. The way the tree on that ridge listens its branches to the sky. The way blood listens its flow to the site of the wound. The way you listen, like a basin when my head's so full of grief can't look you in the eye. We can listen our way out of anger if we let our heart soften the wolf we keep inside. We can last by listening deeply, the way roots reach out the next inch to the earth, the way an old turtle listens, all he hears into the patterns of his shell.
Our next reading is from the Reverend Teresa Soto. I cannot prove to you that I am, we are, human. I cannot prove to you that I am a person, but you can hold my hand, cool and dry, while we pray, or just breathe, ragged breaths catching on our aching ribs. I cannot prove to you that brown skin is holy, that black skin is sacred, but you can know it, luminous and irrepressible, the tabernacle of your own liberation. I cannot prove to you that every queer body, every trans and NB body, every ace and bisexual body sings back to the universe its immense generative power of yes. I cannot prove to you with quadratic certainty that what a disabled body holds is a story of wisdom beyond perfection, like a red sun emerging from behind a cloud of dust. So the answers that I have for a country hacking up a death rattle and a democracy with a wheezing, waxy pallor are about our courage to love. Our desperation not only for survival, but also to tread above the worst of our collective nature and to get each other free. Unashamed that there came a day when we were willing to risk looking foolish to simply stay together and alive. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who was queen of an island. And one day an advisor said to her, "Your Majesty, the people on this island are good, but we must beware of the people on the next island, for they are our enemies." Some of you might know this story. It's a story I tell to our children when we gather in person with some regularity. It's by Chris Bice, a UU minister in Knoxville, Tennessee. The story continues. "Our enemies?" responded the queen. "How terrible!" "Yes, it is terrible," said the advisor, "for our little island will never be safe while we have enemies. We must find a way to get rid of our enemies." "You are quite right," said the queen. "Do you have any ideas?" "I do," said the advisor. "We can take our army, put it on a ship, sail to the other island, and then our army can march on shore and destroy the enemy." The queen was not so sure this was a good idea. "Thank you for sharing your idea, advisor. I am going to think on it." "Can you come back tomorrow?" "Yes, Your Majesty," said the advisor, and he bowed and left the room. The next day, when the advisor returned to the palace to talk to the queen, he was shocked to find her having tea with the queen of the next island. The advisor turned red with anger. "How can you sit there and drink tea with that person?" he shouted. "She is our enemy, and we must get rid of our enemies." The queen looked at her advisor with eyes that were calm and steady. "You have been a good advisor," she said, "and you were right. We have to get rid of our enemies. You would have me destroy my enemies by conquering them with an army. But the best way to get rid of your enemies is to make them your friends." This is one of my favorite stories. And it's not just for children. It's good for us all to remember the best way to get rid of your enemies is to make them your friends. Today, I want to invite us all to be a little more like that child queen. What would it look like to turn our enemies or our opponents or the people we disagree with about things that are important into friends, or maybe speak the truth to the friends we already have who have different views than us on something important? Maybe you know and love someone who thinks COVID-19 is a hoax. Maybe you know and love someone who thinks climate change isn't real. Maybe you know and love someone who thinks Donald Trump is a great president or who isn't bothered enough by the xenophobia and misogyny and racism of his administration to vote against him. Maybe you know and love someone who believes that the victories of the civil rights movement of the 1960s ended racism once and for all in this country, or that being transgender is against God's will, or that everyone would have enough if they just pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, and on and on and on. I imagine many of you are already working on your mental list. I know and love people like this. You do too. And many people's people have reached out to me in recent months naming the struggle. How do I deal with my family who won't wear masks, or my friend who supports Donald Trump, or my coworker who says hateful things? So I hope this service will offer you some guidance and some wisdom as you have hard, brave conversations with people in your life. And as I encourage us all to talk about our deeply held values, I think it's really important for me to be clear about who I am and the position that I'm making this invitation from. So I'm a cisgender, mostly straight, middle-aged white woman with a graduate degree and generational wealth. So in conversations about racism or transphobia, I am not defending my existence or advocating for my personal safety. And that is different. And so if you have a different identity and having these conversations makes you more vulnerable, take what is wisdom I'm offering, but also I'm not trying to be prescriptive for you. More often than I care to admit, I've overlooked or not responded to moments of hate or ignorance in the past because I felt like I didn't have to, because I wanted to keep the peace, because I didn't want to have conflict. And people who are more vulnerable than me don't have that luxury. I know that. And I also know that many in our congregation share some of my identities at least, and perhaps some of my habits of not giving voice to our values as often as I'd like to when the opportunity arises. I've been working hard to change that habit, to break through that socialization that I think is especially strong for women, but everyone gets of, oh, don't rock the boat, don't challenge your elders, don't, have a hard conversation if you can have an easy one. Maybe you're working on some of this too. This sermon is just as much for me as it is for anyone else. In the beautiful poem I read earlier, Reverend Teresa Soto invited us to be willing to risk looking foolish to simply stay together and alive. The stakes are high right now, and I am trying. They present it so clearly in that poem. For me, I know in my head that it is worth it to perhaps look foolish, perhaps engage in conflict, to keep us all together and alive. And I'm working to know that in my heart. We know this moment needs us. Reverend Drew preached on the need for healing community at the service many of us attended a few weeks ago. Clearly, this is an idea that many in our tradition are grappling with. We know that over 70 million people in this country voted for Donald Trump last month. People who experienced all of that administration, the racism, the transphobia, the misogyny, the xenophobia, and the utterly failed response to the coronavirus. And either thought, yes, I want more of that, or at least I'm okay with this for 4 more years. So how can we seek transformation in this moment for a country that so desperately needs it? I think part of it is conversation. Risking those hard conversations, risking unearthing the tensions and the conflicts that might be there. I imagine that child queen from our story preparing to meet the queen of the neighboring island. I imagine she anticipated it might be a hard conversation over those cups of tea, and she engaged in her spiritual practices, doing the things that lead her to feel calm and grounded, in touch with her integrity, and less likely to react in anger. Meditation and prayer help me become that better version of myself. What helps you do that? I also imagine the child queen thinking through the points of disagreement with the neighboring queen. The story doesn't tell us why the advisor thinks the people on the other island are enemies, but that's a strong word, so we can imagine there is a big difference there. I imagine the child queen, if she thinks she needs to persuade the other queen about something, spending some time thinking about a time she changed her mind about something important to her. This is important spiritual work, which is why it was the focus of our meditation today. What has changed your mind about something important? Was it something you read? Was it something someone said to you? Did you seek out new learning or new conversation, or did this change of heart surprise you? If you want to persuade someone else, think about what has persuaded you. In the story, it was obvious who the child queen needed to talk to and needed to befriend. In our lives, if we're committed to the transformation of our country and our community and our world, it isn't so obvious. Many of us know many folks who disagree with us about important things. Some of us have the emotional capacity to have lots of these conversations and have been having them for years. Others are newer. And if you're moving into this work intentionally now or have recently started, I invite you to be modest in your ambitions. Don't start with the diehard QAnon conspiracy theorist in your life, or the person you barely know who fills your social media feed with things that make your blood boil. Start with a person you know well who seems somewhere in the middle, or a person you really like who you don't talk about politics or your values with. Think of the people that you care about, people you are curious about, people you want to know better, and have conversations. So if what you want to talk about doesn't come up naturally in conversation, ask a question. How are you feeling about the election results? What do you think about the coronavirus response in our community? Have you heard that J.K. Rowling has said a lot of transphobic things recently? What do you think about that? Or bring up one of the infinite recent news stories about race or racism or any of the other things that you want to start talking about. And listen. after you ask the question. Really listen. Be curious. Ask a follow-up question or two to more fully understand. Don't interrupt to argue the first time you hear something that you disagree with. And hold space for the possibility of your own transformation. As you ask someone about their values and about something they care deeply about, perhaps they will say something that changes how you think. Good conversations are not about a one-way transfer of knowledge, but coming to a fuller understanding together. Maybe something will shift in you too. And when the moment is right, speak your truth. And as someone whom you all employ in part for my ability to speak truth, who has spent a lot of time learning how to communicate to inspire transformation, I have some advice. Tell a personal story if you can. They're a lot more effective than talking points. None of us are auditioning for one of those political TV shows with lots of yelling. We don't need that. Spend some time thinking about the stories that matter to you, the stories that have shaped you, the story of why you think wearing a mask is important, the story of how you came to understand that Black Lives Matter, the story of how you came to know in your bones that all people deserve care and respect and equal protection under law. And the best stories, the most persuasive stories, cost us something to tell. They are vulnerable stories that don't always make us look good. I don't tell stories from my own life in worship in which I am the hero, because for the most part, stories that inspire or invite change are about our own bumbling and failing and learning, where we can invite the person we're talking to alongside us in our own journey, rather than presenting ourselves as some sort of perfect finished product. The story is about the journey, the learning, are not about us getting it right, are persuasive. So here's an example. I've been kind of theoretical for a bit. So when I first started knowing folks who used they as their pronoun, I mentioned it to a friend with a mild complaint about the grammar and how I didn't like how it sounded to use they for one person. And my friend said, "Rachel, I know you care about words, but I also know you care about people. And do you really want to give more importance to your ideas about good grammar than to respecting folks by using their correct pronouns?" And in that moment, I responded defensively. And then I spent a lot of time thinking about my friend's words, and my mind and heart were slowly changed. I don't grumble anymore, and I work to get it right. And that is a story that I tell when people in my life struggle with the singular they. Which leads to my next conversational advice. Appeal to values, like my friend did with me in the story, when she said, "I know you care about people, but you're doing a thing that is not in line with that value." So that might sound like, "Cousin, I know protecting life matters to you. So how about you wear a mask to protect vulnerable folks?" Or, "Friend, I know that you love children. Can you work with me to help make sure that kids kicked out of their families because of their sexual orientation or gender identity have a safe place to be, or that kids are safe in schools when schools are open?" Or, "Neighbor, you keep such a beautiful garden, and I know you value plants and animals in the natural world. Maybe we could work together to make our block more resilient to our changing climate." And as you have these invitations, the people you invite to change might say no. They probably will say no, at least at first, because real life rarely has the tidy ending of children's stories, where enemies become friends in less than a day. And it's still worth it. Hard, brave conversations are worthwhile even if transformation isn't evident. Even if the best we can tell ourselves that we're planting seeds that might germinate some other time. Having a better understanding of someone we care about who disagrees with us is valuable, even if that's all that happens. Having a chance to practice so it's easier to speak up the next time is valuable. Having a chance to speak what we know is true out loud matters, even if the speaker, even if the one saying it is the only one who's actually hearing it in that moment. It still matters. And we know that the world needs us to speak our truth in love to the people we care about. Our faith and our values demand that we work to transform this world into something closer to the beloved community, the reign of love and justice. And one way, of the many ways to make our values real, is to step into the hard, brave conversations with people we care about who disagree with us. I invite you to join me in the willingness to look foolish or invite conflict to keep us all together and alive. So may it be so. May we make it so. And amen.
Though I may speak with bravest fire and have the gift to all inspire, and have not love, my words are vain, a sounding brass and hopeless gain. Though I may give all I possess, and striving so my love profess, but not be given by love within, the prophet soon turns strangely thin. Come, Spirit, come, our hearts control. Our spirits long to be made whole. Let in one love guide every deed. By this we worship and are freed.
The only good thing that I can think of a world with so many problems is that there is so many ways to make the world a little bit better. And I know many of you are doing them already. So keep up the good work. Talk to the people you love about what matters. Be people of love, people of hope, and people of change. Let us go in peace and go in love.